Have you ever felt that strange sensation of being watched? That prickly feeling on the back of your neck? That tells you you're not alone, even when you should be. Most of us can just turn on a light or look out the window to reassure ourselves. But what if you're deep in the wilderness, miles from civilization, and that feeling just won't go away? Tonight's story is about a solo camper who experienced exactly that, and what he saw will chill you to the bone. Our story begins with Mark, an experienced outdoorsman who loved the solitude of solo camping. He'd spent countless nights under the stars, and the deep woods of a remote national forest felt more like home to him than his own apartment. He set up his camp in a small clearing, a perfect spot with a fire pit and a clear view of the surrounding forest. The first day was idyllic. He hiked, he fished, and as dusk settled, he built a crackling campfire, the flames dancing against the encroaching darkness. As he sat there, enjoying the symphony of crickets and the crackle of burning wood, he scanned the perimeter of his camp, a habit born from years of being in the wild, and that's when he saw it. Standing just at the edge of the tree line, perfectly still, was the silhouette of a man. It was too far to make out any features, but the shape was unmistakable. It wasn't a trick of the light or a strangely shaped tree. It was a figure, standing motionless, simply watching him. Mark felt a jolt of unease. He wasn't on a designated trail. It was strange to see someone else out here. Mark told himself it was probably just another hiker, maybe lost, or just shy. He tried to ignore it, focusing on his fire, but he couldn't shake the feeling. After what felt like an eternity, Mark decided he needed to get some sleep. He doused his fire, secured his food, and zipped himself into his tent. He lay there in the pitch black, his ears straining to catch any sound over the thumping of his own heart. He tried to convince himself that the man would be gone by morning, that it was all just a weird, but harmless encounter. Sleep did not come easily. He kept picturing that silent shape at the edge of the woods. The next morning, the first thing Mark did was scramble out of his tent and look towards the tree line. The spot where the figure had been standing was empty. A wave of relief washed over him. He must have just been a hiker passing through. Mark decided to investigate. He walked over to the spot, expecting to find footprints, some sign that another person had been there. But there was nothing. The ground, soft and damp from the morning dew, was completely undisturbed. Not a single print. It was as if the man had been floating. This was deeply unsettling. Mark spent the day on edge, his head on a swivel, constantly scanning the woods around him. The forest that had felt like a peaceful sanctuary just a day before now felt menacing, like it was holding a dark secret. As night fell again, Mark built his fire up higher than the night before, trying to push back the shadows. He sat with his back to a large rock, so nothing could sneak up on him. He nervously scanned the tree line, dreading what he might see. And then his blood ran cold. The figure was back, but this time it was closer. Much closer. It was no longer at the far edge of the woods, but now stood about halfway across the clearing. It was still just a silhouette against the dark trees, but he could make out a tall, slender build. And again, it was perfectly still, just watching. Mark's heart hammered against his ribs. This was no longer just weird. This was terrifying. He shouted again, his voice trembling this time. "Who are you? What do you want?" The silence that answered him was more frightening than any shout could have been. The figure remained absolutely motionless. Mark grabbed the largest, heaviest branch he could find, holding it like a club. He didn't dare take his eyes off the shape. He thought about packing up and hiking out in the dark, but the thought of turning his back on that thing was unbearable. He spent the entire night awake, staring into the darkness, his fire slowly dying down. He watched as the figure stood there for hours, an unblinking observer in the night. Just before the first light of dawn, he blinked, and it was gone. Vanished. The second morning, Mark was beyond shaken. And just like before, there were no footprints. Not a single trace. It was impossible. Something that, large, had to leave a mark. He was now convinced this wasn't a person. His mind raced with possibilities. each one more terrifying than the last. He decided he was leaving. He couldn't spend another night here. He began to pack his gear with frantic haste, constantly glancing over his shoulder. As he was taking down his tent, he noticed something on the nylon fabric, right next to where his head had been. There were 3 long, deep gouges ripped into the material. They were parallel, and looked like they had been made by claws. They were too far apart and too deep to be from any animal he knew of in these woods, like a bear or a cougar. These marks looked deliberate, almost like a warning. A cold dread seeped into his bones. The thing hadn't just been watching. It had come right up to his tent while he was inside. It had been inches away from him. That was it. He abandoned the rest of his gear, grabbed his backpack with his essentials, and practically ran. He didn't follow the trail. He just crashed through the underbrush, desperate to put as much distance as possible between himself and that clearing. After a few hours of panicked hiking, he stumbled upon a trail and, to his immense relief, encountered a forest ranger on patrol. Mark, breathless and wild-eyed, tried to explain what had happened. He expected the ranger to be skeptical, to dismiss it as a camper's overactive imagination, but the ranger's expression turned grim. He listened intently, nodding slowly. When Mark finished, the ranger looked him dead in the eye and said something that made Mark's heart stop. He said, "You need to get out of these woods." Now, the ranger explained that there had been other reports. Campers and hikers vanishing without a trace. Strange sightings of a tall, dark figure at the edge of the woods. He told Mark about another lone hiker who had been found weeks after he went missing, his camp torn to shreds, with those same strange, 3-pronged claw marks on everything. They never found the hiker. The ranger didn't have a name for it. The locals just called it the Watcher in the Woods. No one knew what it was, or what it wanted. They only knew that when you saw it, you ran. The ranger escorted a terrified Mark all the way back to his car. As Mark drove away, he looked back at the forest in his rearview mirror. The dense trees looked dark and menacing, and he couldn't shake the image of that silent figure, standing at the tree line, watching, waiting, and getting closer every night. Mark never went solo camping again. To this day, he can't sleep without a light on, and he never, ever looks into a dark patch of trees for too long, terrified of what he might see looking back. So, what do you think? Was it a ghost, a cryptid, or something even more sinister? Let me know your theories in the comments below. If you have your own creepy story you'd like to share, send it to us. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next descent into the darkness. Stay safe out there. Ever camped out in the middle of nowhere, far from city lights, where the only sounds are crickets and the rustle of leaves? It sounds peaceable, right? Well, for 4 Frenzium, Chloe, Ben, and my weekend camping trip turned into a nightmare they'd never forget. And it all started with a whisper. They chose a spot deep in the Blackwood Forest, a remote clearing not far from an old, abandoned ranger station. It was the perfect getaway. They set up their tents, built a roaring campfire, and shared stories under a star-filled sky. Everything was perfect. The first night, as the fire died down to glowing embers, and everyone was zipped up in their sleeping bags, it began, a faint sound, like wind carrying a hushed voice. Liam, a light sleeper, heard it first, a soft, indistinct whisper just outside his tent. He brushed it off as his imagination, maybe a branch scraping against the nylon. The second night, it was Ludair. This time, Chloe heard it too. It was a murmur, a series of whispers that seemed to come from all directions at once. "Did you hear that?" She texted Liam from her tent. "Yeah," he typed back. "Probably just Ben trying to spook us." The next morning, they confronted Ben, the group's notorious prankster. He just laughed. "Wasn't me," he said, holding up his hands. "But good one, whoever it was. You almost got me." Maya rolled her eyes. She was the skeptic, always looking for a rational explanation. "It's the wind, guys." The old ranger station probably creates weird acoustics. They wanted to believe her, they really did. But the feeling of being watched was starting to creep in. That afternoon, while gathering firewood, they found something strange. Footprints. Not animal tracks. and not their own. T. Werlon, slender, almost human-like, but with an unnatural shape. They circled their campsite, stopping just short of each tent. The unease grew. Ben wasn't laughing anymore. That night, they decided to stay awake. They sat around the dying fire, listening intently. Just after midnight, the whispering started again. This time, it was clearer. It wasn't just random sounds. It was words, but in a language none of them recognized. And woven within the chilling chorus, they heard their own names. Liam, ... Chloe, ... Chloe's hands trembled as she pulled out her phone and hit record. She had to get proof. The whispers grew closer, swirling around their tents. It sounded like dozens of people were standing just feet away, murmuring to each other in the darkness. But when they shined their flashlights into the woods, there was nothing. Just trees and shadows. The air grew cold, a sudden drop in temperature that had nothing to do with the night air. Overwhelmed by fear, they scrambled back into their tents, zipping them up tight as if a thin layer of fabric could protect them. The whispering continued all night, a constant, terrifying lullaby. The next morning, sleep-deprived and on edge, they packed up in a hurry. They needed to get out of there. On their way out of the forest, they passed the main ranger station, the one that was still in use. An old, grizzled ranger was sitting on the porch. Seeing their rattled faces, he asked if everything was all right. Liam hesitated, then told him about the whispers, the footprints, everything. The ranger's friendly demeanor vanished. His face grew grim. He told them they were lucky to have gotten out. "You camped by the old station, didn't you?" he asked, his voice low. "Folks have been hearing things out there for generations. They call them the Whisperers." He explained that decades ago, a group of campers had vanished from that exact spot. No trace was ever found, except for a single audio recorder. When the authorities played it back, all they heard were whispers and the campers screaming their own names. The ranger told them that local legend says whatever is out there mimics voices to lure you into the woods. It learns your name and calls to you, drawing you away from the safety of the fire. As he spoke, Chloe played the audio she'd recorded on her phone. The ranger's face went pale. In the recording, beneath the layers of whispers, a new sound could be heard, a clear, chilling voice repeating their names, one by one. Liam ... Chloe ... Ben, Maya ... But that wasn't the most terrifying part. As the audio played, another sound emerged. It was faint, but unmistakable. It was the sound of a tent zipper, slowly being pulled down. Chloe's zipper. From inside her tent. A sound none of them had made. They stared at each other in horror. The realization hit them like a physical blow. Whatever was out there hadn't just been whispering outside. It had been inside with them. They thanked the ranger, got in their car, and drove away as fast as they could, not looking back. They never went camping again. Sometimes, late at night, Liam swears he can still hear it. A faint whisper on the edge of hearing, carried on the wind, calling his name. They survived the whispering in the woods, but a part of them never truly left that campsite. It serves as a chilling reminder that some places are best left alone, and some mysteries are best left unsolved. Because when you go deep into the woods, you never know who or what might be listening. Thanks for watching. If you have your own spooky camping story, share it in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more chilling tales. Stay safe out there. Ever camped in the woods and heard something you just couldn't explain? Imagine this. It's you, your partner, and a tent, deep in the forest during the quiet off-season. Miles from anyone. The crackling campfire is your only companion against the pitch-black night. That's exactly where Jake and Sarah found themselves, seeking a peaceful escape from the city. But the silence of the woods can be deceptive. One night, it's shattered by a sound that chills them to the bone. It started as a distant shriek, echoing through the trees. At first, they dismissed it. Just a fox, Jake probably said, trying to sound confident. Or maybe a rabbit caught by a predator. It's a common sound in the wild, right? Annoying, a bit startling, but natural. They tried to ignore it, to go back to sleep. But the sound didn't stop. It came again and again, closer each time. There was something about this scream that was off. It was guttural, raw, filled with the kind of agony that sounded too complex for any animal they knew. Then, the truly terrifying part began. The scream started to change. It twisted and morphed, and amidst the animalistic cries, they started to hear something else. A word. Faint at first. Almost a trick of the wind. Help. It was distorted, like a recording being played backward and then forward, but it was there. The screams weren't just random animal noises anymore. They were mimicking human speech. Hilbe. Ober and ober! The voice cried out from the darkness. A horrifying blend of animal and human. Every instinct in their bodies screamed danger. This wasn't a person in trouble. No person could make that sound. It was something pretending, something luring. The forest, which had felt so peaceful just hours before, now felt like a cage. The usual night sounds that crickets, the rustling of small animals had all gone silent. It was as if every living creature was holding its breath, listening to the same monstrous performance. The only sound was the rhythmic, horrifying plea echoing through the dead still air. Frozen in their tent, Jake and Sarah listened as the sounds got even closer. Now, they could hear movement. Heavy, deliberate footsteps circling their campsite. It wasn't the light-footed tread of a deer or a fox. It was something large. Something that walked with weight, crunching leaves and snapping twigs just beyond the glow of their dying fire. It circled them. Once, twice, 3 times. They held their breath, too scared to even whisper. The fabric of their tent felt like paper, offering no protection from whatever was just outside. The screaming had stopped, replaced by this heavy, circling presence, which was somehow even more terrifying. After what felt like an eternity of silent torment, the footsteps finally receded. The first hint of dawn was breaking, painting the sky in shades of gray. They didn't sleep a wink. As soon as there was enough light to see, they cautiously unzipped the tent. The campsite looked untouched. Their fire was just embers. For a moment, they almost convinced themselves it was a shared nightmare. Maybe the strange isolation had played tricks on their minds. They needed to believe that, just to be able to pack up and leave. Deciding to get out of there as fast as possible, they started packing their gear. Jake, needing to step away from the unsettling campsite, walked a short distance into the woods. That's when he found them. Torn and shredded pieces of clothing, snagged on thorns and branches. It was a flannel shirt and part of a pair of jeans, ripped to ribbons as if by powerful claws. They looked like they had been there for weeks, weathered and faded. The horrifying realization hit them. This wasn't the first time this had happened. Someone else had been here. Someone else had heard the screams. That was it. They didn't need any more proof. Panic set in. They threw their gear into the car with frantic speed, not caring if anything broke. They just had to get out. They jumped into the car, locked the doors, and Jake fumbled with the keys. His hands shaking, he turned the key. The engine roared to life, and they sped away down the dirt track, leaving the silent, watchful forest behind them. They didn't look back. They drove 4 miles without saying a word, the adrenaline slowly being replaced by a deep, cold dread. When they finally felt safe enough to stop for gas, the sun was high in the sky. As Sarah got out of the car, she gasped. Jake ran over to see what was wrong. There, on the roof of their car, were 3 long, deep gouges in the metal. They were unmistakable claw marks, scraped from the front to the back, as if something large had clung to their roof while they were sleeping. The thing in the woods hadn't just circled their tent. It had been on top of their car, right above their heads. They had been so much closer to it than they ever imagined. They never went back to those woods. They never even spoke about what happened for a long time. But they never forgot. What was that creature? Was it an undiscovered animal? A prank gone horribly wrong? Or something far more sinister? Theories range from a rare predator with mimicking abilities to local legends of forest spirits. Some even whisper about a creature known as a skinwalker or a wendigo. These are tales of beings that can imitate human voices to lure their prey. Whatever it was, Jake and Sarah's story serves as a chilling reminder. When you're in the wilderness, far from civilization, you are never truly alone. And sometimes, when the woods scream, you should pray. It's only an animal. What do you think was out there? Let me know your theories in the comments below. Have you ever had a creepy camping experience? I'd love to hear your story. If you enjoyed this dive into the unknown, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of mystery and suspense. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there. Have you ever stumbled upon something that just felt wrong? A place where the silence is too loud, and the air feels heavy with unspoken secrets. Today, we're diving into a story like that. A tale that starts with a perfect family vacation and ends with a chilling, unanswered question. Imagine this. A beautiful, secluded lake, deep in the wilderness. The sun is shining, the water is crystal clear, and it seems like the perfect spot to get away from it all. A familiar mom, a dad, and their 2 young kids arrive. Ready for a weekend of camping? As they pull up to the shoreline, they can't believe their luck. Not only is the best campsite by the water available, but it looks like someone has already done the hard work for them. 3 high-quality tents are perfectly pitched, looking almost brand new. It's a little strange, but they figure the previous campers must have had to leave in a hurry and would be back for their gear. So, they decide to set up their own camp nearby. The dad, trying to be a good Samaritan, peeks into one of the abandoned tents to see if there's any idea. What he finds is baffling. The tents are fully stocked. Sleeping bags are unrolled, camping chairs are set up, and there's even food left out on a small portable table. A half-eaten sandwich, an open bag of chips, a thermos of what turns out to be still warm coffee. It's as if the occupants just vanished into thin air. There are no signs of a struggle, no animal tracks, nothing to explain it. It's just empty. A ghost camp. A ghost camp. The family feels a bit uneasy, but the beauty of the lake is too alluring to pass up. The parents try to rationalize it. Maybe a family emergency? Maybe they went for a long hike and got delayed. They decide to stay, keeping an eye out for the owner's return. The kids, oblivious to the growing tension, are thrilled to explore. While their parents are setting up their own gear, the children wander over to the abandoned site. A little while later, their daughter comes running back, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and excitement. She's holding a small, leather-bound journal. She found it tucked inside one of the sleeping bags. The parents hesitate, feeling like they're prying, but curiosity gets the better of them. They open Italiano. The first few entries are exactly what you'd expect. Cheerful notes about the beautiful scenery, the good fishing, the joy of being in nature. The handwriting is neat and optimistic, but as they flip through the pages, the tone changes dramatically. The neat script becomes a frantic scrawl. The entries get shorter, more desperate. One entry reads, "Something's wrong with the water. Saw shadows moving under the surface. Huge. Too fast to be fish." The next page is even more disturbing. "Can't sleep. The splashing noises started again last night. It sounds like someone is waiting just outside the tent. But when we look, there's nothing there, just ripples in the moonlight." The final entry is just a few hastily scrawled words, the ink smudged as if written in a panic. They're on the shore. They're not human. Oh God. The shadows are coming out of the water. And that's where it ends. The rest of the journal is blank. A cold dread washes over the parents. This wasn't a family emergency. Something terrible happened here. They look at the pristine, still lake, and it no longer seems beautiful. It looks dark, menacing. Every ripple on the surface seems to hold a secret. The dad immediately says, "We're leaving." Now, they start packing up their gear, their movements frantic, constantly glancing over their shoulders at the water. The kids are confused and scared, picking up on their parents' panic as the sun begins to set, casting long, eerie shadows across the campsite. The air grows still, deathly quiet, and then they hear it, a soft splashing sound coming from the lake. It's rhythmic, methodical. It sounds like something large is slowly wading through the shallows, getting closer and closer to the shore. The family freezes, their hearts pounding in their chests. They stare out at the darkening water, but they can't see anything. The splashing stops. Silence returns. But the silence is somehow worse. It's full of anticipation. The father grabs a heavy flashlight, his knuckles white. The mother pulls the children close, whispering for them to stay quiet. Suddenly, from the direction of the abandoned tents, There's a loud, tearing sound, followed by a snap. They swing the flashlight beam over. All three of the abandoned tents have collapsed, flattened as if something enormous had just stepped on them. The poles are bent and broken, the fabric ripped to shreds. But they saw nothing, heard nothing besides the initial collapse. It was instantaneous and violent. That's it. They don't wait for another second. They throw their remaining gear into the car, not even bothering to pack it properly. The kids are crying, and the parents are trying to stay calm, but their faces are pale with terror. As they drive away, tires screeching on the dirt road, the dad looks in the rearview mirror. For a fleeting moment, in the faint glow of their tillets, he thinks he sees them, tall, slender figures standing at the water's edge. They're dark, featureless silhouettes against the shimmering lake, just watching them go. He blinks, and they're gone. Was it just a trick of the light? A product of his fear-addled mind? He doesn't know, and he doesn't want to. Weeks later, back in the safety of their home, the father can't shake the memory. He does some research online, searching for news articles about missing persons near that specific lake. He finds it, a small news brief from a few months prior. 3 hikers, experienced outdoorsmen, had gone camping at the lake and never returned. Their car was found at the trailhead, but no trace of the men themselves was ever discovered. The article mentions their names. The father opens the journal he'd taken from the campsite, his hand trembling. The name on the inside cover matches one of the missing hikers. They were in the exact spot where 3 people had vanished without a trace. They had read the final, terrifying words of one of the victims. And they had heard and seen whatever it was that took them. The family never went camping again. The lake remains on the map, a beautiful, serene spot. But for one family, it's a place of nightmares. A place where shadows swim in the deep and come out of the water when the sun goes down. What do you think happened to those hikers? And what were those figures by the water? Let me know your theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching. And if you enjoy mysteries that linger long after the story is over, make sure to like and subscribe. Stay safe out there.